The air in the delivery room was thick with the metallic smell of fear and disinfectant. The monitors screamed a desperate, rhythmic plea. Evelyn Blackwell was fighting for 2 lives, but she was losing. Her heart was failing. And as doctors fought to save her, her husband Marcus wasn't by her side. He wasn't in the waiting room. He was 1 floor down in the hospital chapel, sliding a wedding ring onto the finger of his mistress. He thought his wife was dying. He was wrong. And what happened next would shatter 3 lives forever. The home of Marcus and Evelyn Blackwell. A 3-story brownstone on a quiet, tree-lined street in Brooklyn was a testament to curated perfection. It was a life built of high thread count sheets, minimalist Scandinavian furniture, and the subtle expensive scent of Joe Malone diffusers. Marcus was a senior wealth manager at Meridian Capital, a man who moved millions with a click. His success measured in the sharp cut of his Tom Ford suits, and the cold, appraising look in his eyes. Evelyn, a former textile designer, had poured her creativity into her own boutique, The Golden Thread, and for the last 8 months into the nursery. The nursery was the only room in the house that held any warmth. Where Marcus had chosen shades of gray and chrome for the living spaces, Evelyn had painted the nursery in soft yellows and sage green, with a hand-stenciled mural of a whimsical forest. She was 36 weeks pregnant, and the child, a boy they had decided to name Oliver, was her entire focus. The perfection began to crack on a Tuesday. Marcus was late again. "Dinner with the board," his text had read. Evelyn, feeling the heavy pressing weight of the baby under her ribs, was organizing his study. She wasn't snooping. Not really. She was just looking for a misplaced insurance file for the hospital pre-registration. She opened a drawer she rarely touched, the one where he kept old tech. Tucked beneath a jumble of chargers and an old iPod, she found it. A sleek, black burner phone. It wasn't locked. Her heart, which had been beating a steady pregnancy-slowed rhythm, began to hammer against her ribs. The screen lit up with a single notification. From S. Private. "Last night was incredible. He's a fool to stay with her. I can't wait for you to be mine. All mine." Evelyn scrolled. It was an avalanche. Months of it. Explicit texts, photos, hotel reservations. S was Serafina, a name Evelyn vaguely recognized from a company Christmas party. She was new in his department. Younger, sharper, with a hunger in her eyes that Evelyn had mistaken for ambition. The texts detailed trips Evelyn had believed were solo retreats for Marcus. Weekends he needed to decompress. They spoke of her Evelyn with a cold disdain. The ticking clock, the incubator, his obligation. Evelyn sank to the floor, the burner phone clattering onto the expensive Persian rug. The pain that shot through her was so immediate, so violent, she mistook it for a contraction. It was a white-hot knife of betrayal so profound, it felt physical. The front door clicked open at 10:17 p.m. Marcus walked in, loosening his silk tie. "Evelyn, what are you doing on the floor? Is it the baby?" She looked up, her face pale, her eyes hollow. She held up the phone. "Who is Serafina?" The mask of the concerned husband dissolved. Marcus's face, usually so composed, cycled through shock, then anger, then a terrifying, cold indifference. "You had no right to go through my things," he said, his voice flat. She called me an incubator." Evelyn whispered the words, choking her. "You let her. In our home, the text from last week, the client dinner." "It just happened, Evelyn," he said, shrugging, already moving toward the bar to pour a whiskey. "It happened, Marcus. I am carrying your son," she shrieked, the sound tearing from her throat. "We took vows. Vows, Evelyn, were a business arrangement, he scoffed, finally turning to look at her. We have been for years. We wanted the same things. This house, the status, the kid. Don't be so naive. Naive? The word was a slap. The room began to spin. I love you. I thought you loved. Love is for children, he said, taking a sip. Serafina, she understands me. She understands what I need. She's not this. He gestured vaguely at her swollen belly, at the messy emotional reality of their life. The betrayal was complete. The man she loved didn't exist. He was a phantom, a story she had told herself. The pain in her abdomen, which had been a dull throb, suddenly seized her in an iron grip. It was 1,000 knives all at once. Marcus, she gasped, clutching her stomach. Something's wrong. He sighed, annoyed. Don't be dramatic, Evelyn. It's Braxton Hicks. You read the books. No, she screamed, as a gush of warmth spread beneath her. She looked down. Blood. Dark red soaking into the light gray rug. Marcus, call 911, please. Only then, seeing the crimson stain, did the color drain from his face. The whiskey glass shattered on the floor. The world went black for Evelyn, the last sound she heard, the distant panicked sirens wailing against the betrayal of his voice. The ambulance ride was a blur of frantic voices and screaming tires. When they burst through the emergency doors of St. Jude's Mercy Hospital, Evelyn was already in hemorrhagic shock. Massive placental abruption! A doctor, Lena Hansen shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She's in severe distress. Heart rate is plummeting. We need to get this baby out or we lose them both. Page the ICU. Get me an OR now. Marcus was shoved into a sterile beige waiting room. The smell of bleach and stale coffee choked him. He sat his hands, the same hands that had held the burner phone, covered in his wife's blood. He felt nothing. Just a hollow, roaring void. He wasn't a husband. He wasn't a father. He was just a man who had been caught. An hour passed, then 2. A nurse updated him tersely. She's critical. We're doing everything we can. Then a different set of footsteps clicked down the hall. Not the sensible rubber-soled shoes of a nurse, but the sharp staccato of expensive heels. Serafina. She was wearing a black cocktail dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She looked entirely out of place, a sleek panther in a cage of sick sheep. Marcus, she breathed, rushing to him, ignoring the stares of the other waiting families. She didn't hug him. She grabbed his hands, her red nails digging into his skin. I came as soon as I heard. My God, this is a nightmare. They said she's critical. Marcus stammered the reality of the word critical, finally landing. Serafina's eyes, a piercing ice blue, were not filled with sympathy. They were sharp, calculating. Marcus, darling, listen to me, she whispered, her voice a seductive poison. You heard what the nurse said. Critical. That's a code word, baby. It means she's gone. They're just keeping the machines on. You know this. No, they said, the baby, she scoffed softly. Marcus, be realistic. The baby it's a casualty. It's tragic. It's awful. But it's not your fault. She was reframing the narrative, painting him as the victim, the widower. I killed her, he whispered, the truth of it hitting him. The fight, the stress. I did this. No, Serafina said, her grip tightening. This is not on you. This was a weak woman, Marcus. Her body was weak. Our relationship, it just exposed the cracks that were already there. You can't live your life for someone who was already broken. She stroked his cheek, her touch cool and possessive. She's gone, Marcus, And now you're free. We are free. Free, he echoed, numb. Yes. Think about it. This is a clean break. Tragic, yes, but clean. No messy divorce. No fighting over assets. It's just over. You can grieve, and then you can move on. With me. She pulled him up from the plastic chair. You don't need to be here for this, my love. Let the doctors do their job. Let her, family, handle the arrangements. You and I, we need to start our life. Right now. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a vow, she said, her eyes gleaming with a feverish intensity. I won't let you fall apart. She's in the past, Marcus. I am your future. I love you. I want to be your wife, not in 6 months. Now. Tonight. Be my... Serafina, she's upstairs. She's gone, Serafina insisted, her voice hardening. And I'm right here. Marry me, Marcus. Prove to me that I'm not just the other woman. Prove to me that what we have is real. Let's go. Right now. There's a 24-hour chapel 1 floor down. We can have a justice of the peace from the city clerk's office here in 30 minutes. It was insane. It was grotesque. But in his state of shock, adrift in a sea of guilt, her decisiveness was a lifeline. She was giving him an order, a way to escape the crushing weight of what he had done. If he was a new husband, he couldn't be the old one. If he was with Serafina, he wasn't the man who had just put his wife and child in the grave. He let her lead him from the waiting room. He didn't look back. Down in the sterile, non-denominational hospital chapel, under the pale fluorescent lights, a bored-looking justice of the peace named Mr. Henderson, who Serafina had somehow summoned at 2 a.m., read from a script. Marcus stood there, his suit jacket still stained with Evelyn's blood. Serafina in her black dress looked like a widow. Or perhaps a victor. Do you, Marcus, take Serafina to be your lawfully wedded wife? He looked at Serafina. Her eyes were triumphant. I do, he whispered. His voice was a hollow shell. As he slid a simple gold band one Serafina had produced from her purse, just in case, onto her finger, the monitors 1 floor above them flatlined. Code Blue Room 304 crash cart now. Dr. Lena Hansen was covered in blood. She's arresting. Get me the paddles. Charge to 200. The OR was a scene of controlled panic. They had gotten the baby out, but just barely. The C-section had been brutal. The moment they'd made the incision, Evelyn's blood pressure had bottomed out. The abruption was total. Clear, Dr. Hansen yelled. Evelyn's body jerked on the table. Nothing. Again, charge to 300. Another jolt. A single weak beep on the monitor. A rhythm. We have her. We have a pulse. Get her on bypass. Get 2 more units of ONEG in her, and get her to the ICU. She's not out of the woods. Not by a long shot. Dr. Hansen then turned her attention to the other patient. He was impossibly small. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. His skin was translucent, his cries thin and reedy like a kitten's. He was alive. APGAR score is a 5, a neonatal nurse said, working on him with practiced, gentle hands. He's struggling to breathe, needs surfactant. Let's get him to the NICU stat. The nurse, a kind older woman named Ada Patel, wrapped the tiny baby in a sterile blanket and rushed him to the neonatal intensive care unit. He was placed in a giraffe model incubator, a plastic womb of warmth and filtered air. Wires were attached to his tiny chest. A feeding tube inserted a CPAP mask fitted over his minuscule face. Nurse Patel looked at the tag on the incubator. Baby boy Blackwell, she sighed, her heart aching for the tiny soul, and the mother fighting for her life, just 1 floor up. 3 hours later, Marcus Blackwell returned to the surgical waiting room. He was a married man. Again. The champagne Serafina had produced from her oversized designer bag, a celebratory split of Moët, had been cheap and warm, and it sat like acid in his stomach. Serafina had kissed him hard. "Go," she'd said. "Sign the papers. Handle the finality. I'll go home and get your things. We'll start fresh. I'll see you at our apartment." Marcus walked to the surgical desk, bracing himself to ask about the morgue, about funeral homes. Nurse Patel was at the desk, writing charts. She looked up. Her eyes, warm moments ago, turned to ice. She had been on duty when Evelyn was admitted. She had seen Marcus leave the waiting room not with a family member, but with a blonde woman in a cocktail dress. The hospital grapevine was faster than an IV drip. "Mr. Blackwell?" she said, her voice dripping with professional contempt. "You're back." My wife, Evelyn Blackwell. What's the news?" "Your wife," Nurse Patel said, emphasizing the word, "is in a medically induced coma in the surgical ICU. Dr. Hansen stabilized her, but the blood loss was extensive. She sustained significant trauma. We're monitoring for brain activity." Marcus stared. "Coma not dead?" "No, Mr. Blackwell, not dead, though not for lack of trying, it seems." The barb was subtle, but it hit its mark. "And your son? He's in the NICU. He's waiting for you." "My son?" The word felt foreign, impossible. "He lived." "Yes, he lived." Nurse Patel stood. "This way." She led him through a set of double doors into a room that was otherworldly. It was dark, save for the soft blue and green glows of dozens of monitors. The only sound was the gentle rhythmic whooshing of ventilators and the soft beeps of heart monitors. It was a room full of tiny fighting souls. She stopped in front of an incubator in the corner. "This is Oliver." Marcus looked through the plastic at the creature inside. He couldn't process it. This wasn't a baby. It was a thing. A frail bird-like creature, swimming in a sea of tubes and wires. He felt a profound, horrifying detachment. This was the problem. This was the thing that had complicated his life, that had led to the fight, the blood, the coma. "He's very fragile," Nurse Patel said, watching Marcus with a hawk's intensity. "But he's a fighter, just like his mother." Marcus just nodded, his gaze empty. He felt Serafina's ring on his finger, a cold, heavy circle of gold. He felt the phantom weight of Evelyn's wedding band, which was at this very moment being removed from her swollen hand in the ICU. "You should touch him," Nurse Patel said. I can't. I'll break him." "You won't break him. He needs contact. It's called kangaroo care. Skin to skin helps regulate their heart rate. But right now, we'll settle for a hand." She opened one of the small, circular ports on the side of the incubator. "Go on. He needs to know his father." Father. The word was an accusation. He looked at his hand, the hand that had held a whiskey glass, as his wife bled the hand that had just accepted a ring from his mistress. It felt unclean. But the nurse was staring at him, her judgment a palpable force. Slowly, reluctantly, Marcus extended his hand into the warm, humid air of the incubator. He hesitantly reached out a single finger, brushing it against the baby's paper-thin skin. Oliver, in his sleep, flinched. And then something impossible happened. The baby's tiny skeletal hand, no bigger than a quarter, moved with a sudden reflexive strength. It clamped around Marcus's index finger. The grip was tiny, but to Marcus it felt like a steel trap. It was not a gesture of love. It was an anchor. It was a claim. In that single electric moment, the hollow void inside him collapsed. The detachment shattered, and in its place a tidal wave of gut-wrenching, soul-crushing guilt roared to the surface. This was not a thing. This was his son. This was Evelyn's son. This was Oliver. The face of his wife flashed in his mind, not the angry, betrayed woman from last night, but the woman from a year ago laughing in the park, the woman who had cried with joy when the pregnancy test was positive, the woman he had promised to love and honor and protect, the woman he had abandoned, the woman he had replaced. While she was fighting for her life, he had been sipping champagne in a chapel. The baby's grip tightened as if he knew, as if he was the only witness to the crime. Marcus choked a sound torn from his very core. He ripped his hand from the incubator, stumbling backward. "I can't," he wheezed. "I can't." He turned and fled the NICU. He made it to the hallway bathroom just as his body revolted. He fell to his knees in front of a toilet, vomiting up the cheap champagne and the bile of his own choices. He retched until his stomach was empty, but the feeling of self-loathing remained a permanent, burning cancer. He was a husband to 2 women. He was a father to 1 child. And he was a monster. He splashed cold water on his face, staring at his reflection in the cheap hospital-grade mirror. His eyes were bloodshot. His suit was ruined. And on his left hand, the new, bright, simple gold band gleamed like a mark of Cain. He couldn't take it off. The ring was too tight. Serafina had bought a size too small. It was a shackle. The cavalry arrived at 7 a.m. in the form of Clare, Evelyn's younger sister. Clare was everything Evelyn was not. Where Evelyn was soft, creative, and yielding, Clare was angular, pragmatic, and sharp. She was a partner at Harrison & Blackwood, a high-powered litigation firm, and she walked into the ICU waiting room like she was entering a hostile deposition. She found Marcus slumped in a chair, smelling of vomit and expensive cologne. He looked like a man who had been shattered. "Marcus," she said, her voice void of any greeting. "What happened? I got a call from a social worker. They said Evelyn, she's in a coma," Marcus whispered, his voice hoarse. "Placental abruption. They had to do an emergency C-section." "My God." Clare visibly reeled, her professional armor cracking for just a second. "And the baby? A boy, Oliver. He's in the NICU. He's alive." "Okay." Clare slipped into lawyer mode, her mind processing, categorizing. "Okay, so she's stable. He's stable. What was the precipitating event? Was it a fall?" Marcus couldn't meet her eyes. He just stared at his hands. His left hand. Clare's gaze followed his. She saw the new ring. It was simple yellow gold. It was not the platinum band Evelyn had given him. Her brain, trained to see discrepancies, focused on it. "Marcus," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, glacial calm. "What is that? On your finger?" Marcus flinched. He had nowhere to hide. You got a manicure?" she asked, her voice laced with acid. "Clare, please. Where is your wedding ring, the one my sister gave you?" He couldn't speak. He just looked at her, his eyes pleading. But Clare was a litigator. She saw the blood on his cuffs, the faint smear of lipstick on his collar that wasn't Evelyn's shade, the brand new ring. She pieced it together with a speed that was terrifying. "You monster," she whispered, the words filled with such venom that Marcus physically recoiled. "She is lying in a hospital bed in a coma, and you got married. You don't understand," he pleaded. "I understand," she hissed, "that you are an adulterer. I understand that you abandoned my sister while she was bleeding to death. I understand that you desecrated this entire family and you did it while her son was being born. Get out. Claire, I'm his father. I have rights. You have no rights in this room, Claire snapped. She flagged down a security guard. This man is not family. He is not to be allowed near Evelyn Blackwell. His name is to be removed from her visitor list. He is a threat to her well-being. The guard, seeing the fury in Claire's eyes and the absolute wreck of a man before her, nodded. Sir, you need to come with me. Marcus, with no fight left in him, allowed himself to be escorted out. Claire's war had just begun. She spent the next 2 days in a blur of activity. She met with Dr. Hansen, getting a full picture of Evelyn's condition. Prognosis is uncertain, she's stable, but the brain's recovery is a mystery. And Oliver's, he's a fighter, his lungs are weak, but he's responding to treatment. She then went to Evelyn's home, their home, to retrieve toiletries and personal items. What she found stopped her cold. The house had been sanitized. Serafina had already been there. The nursery Evelyn had so lovingly painted was locked. But in the master bedroom, all of Evelyn's clothes were gone from the closet. Her perfumes were gone from the vanity. Her maternity books, her ultrasound photos, all swept from the bedside table, replaced by a bottle of Serafina's perfume and a men's magazine. In the trash bin in the alley, Claire found them bags of Evelyn's clothes, her shoes, her personal effects, all destined for a donation truck. Serafina was erasing her. But Serafina, in her haste, had missed something. Tucked under the mattress where Evelyn often hid her personal journal, Claire found it. And inside, she found the burner phone. Evelyn had hidden it there after the confrontation, before she collapsed. Claire sat on the bed that no longer smelled like her sister and read every single text. It was a detailed, horrific timeline of the affair, of the emotional abuse, of the betrayal. She called her office. "Get me Judge Eleanor Vance on her private line," she said to her assistant. "And find me the best, most ruthless family law attorney in New York. We are filing for an emergency temporary restraining order and immediate sole custody of the minor child on behalf of Evelyn Blackwell." She had her evidence. The affair, the abandonment, the new marriage, the desecration of the home. Meanwhile, Serafina was playing the role of the new wife with gusto. She had taken Marcus's credit cards and was redecorating their new life. "It's just stuff, Marcus," she said smoothly when he arrived at her apartment, his face ashen. "We need a fresh start. We can't have her ghost haunting us." She was furious when she was served with the TRO. "That little witch," Serafina seethed, reading the legal documents. "She can't do this. You're the father. You have to fight this, Marcus. We will raise that baby. He needs a real mother, one who is present. We'll sue for custody." Marcus, however, was a broken man. He wasn't at the apartment. He was spending his days in the public waiting room of the NICU, staring through the glass at the son he was now legally barred from touching. The baby's tiny hand wrapped around his finger was a permanent burning brand on his soul. The legal battle was immediate and brutal. Marcus, represented by a high-priced lawyer Serafina had hired, argued that as the father, he had a right to his son. Clare, acting as Evelyn's proxy, argued that he had morally and legally abdicated that right when he abandoned his wife and committed bigamy. "It is not technically bigamy, Your Honor," Marcus's lawyer argued. "My client was under the impression his first wife was deceased. It was a moment of profound emotional distress. A moment he celebrated with champagne and a new wedding ring," the judge snapped back, having read Clare's affidavit. The court granted Clare temporary medical and legal guardianship of Oliver pending Evelyn's recovery. Marcus was granted 1-hour supervised visits twice a week. Serafina was barred from the hospital entirely. This was not the plan. Serafina's plan had been simple. Evelyn dies. Marcus inherits. She marries the grieving, pliable widower. They control the assets, and the tragedy provides a perfect cover story. Evelyn's survival and Claire's interference had complicated everything. But Clare wasn't just a protective sister. She was a predator who smelled blood in the water. This Serafina. She was too polished, too quick to act too greedy. The story didn't add up. Clare used her firm's resources to hire a private investigator. Art Donovan, the PI, introduced himself. Ex-NYPD, cynical and meticulous. "What am I looking for?" "Everything," Clare said. "Her real name, her credit history, her ex-boyfriends, where she gets her nails done. I want to know what she ate for breakfast. Find the dirt, Art." Art Donovan was worth every penny. Within 72 hours, he had a file. "She's not Serafina," he said, sliding a folder across Claire's desk. "Not legally. Her name is Sarah Jenkins. Born in Iowa. Bounced around a lot. Vegas, Miami, now New fucking York." The file was thick. Serafina Jenkins had a history. A long one. "She's not just a gold digger," Art explained, sipping the coffee Clare had provided. "She's a high-stakes con artist. She has 2 outstanding judgments against her in Nevada for casino debts, over $300,000. She has another in Florida for defaulting on a car lease, a Maserati. She's drowning in debt." "So she targeted Marcus for his money," Clare concluded. "It's a classic story." "It's deeper," Art said, flipping a page. "I ran her financials. She's been making large, untraceable wire transfers to an offshore account in the Caymans. The money isn't coming from Marcus. Not directly." He pointed to a name. "I pulled her employment records from Meridian Capital. She got the job 6 months ago using fake references. She wasn't hired as an associate, as she claimed. She was a temp in the accounting department, with access." Claire's blood ran cold. Access to what? Client accounts. Specifically the high-value dormant accounts that your brother-in-law Marcus manages. The accounts of billionaires who are too rich to notice a few $100,000 missing here and there. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a long con. "She was embezzling," Clare breathed. "She's been siphoning funds for months," Art confirmed. "My guess, she knew an audit was coming. She needed a scapegoat. She targeted Marcus, got close to him, started the affair. She was planting a digital trail to frame him for the whole thing. And the marriage was her endgame," Art finished. "If Evelyn dies, she becomes his wife. She gains spousal privilege. She gets access to all his financials, his passwords, his life. She can complete the frame, clean him out, and be on a plane to a non-extradition country before his firm even knows what hit them. Her marrying him in that chapel wasn't passion, it was panic. She thought Evelyn was dead, and she needed to lock him down before the body was cold and the accounts were frozen. The audacity, the cold-blooded calculation of it was breathtaking. She hadn't just been stealing Marcus's heart, she'd been stealing his entire identity. Clare now had a nuclear bomb. She arranged a meeting. Not with the police, not yet. She arranged it with Marcus. He met her in a conference room at the hospital, looking thin and haunted. His supervised visits with Oliver were silent, agonizing affairs. The baby, sensing the tension, often cried. "What is this, Clare, more legal papers?" he asked, defeated. Clare didn't say a word. She simply slid Art Donovan's file across the table. Marcus read. He saw the real name. The gambling debts. The wire transfers. He saw the printouts from Meridian Capital's servers showing access codes from Serafina's terminal, logging into his client files. He saw the love texts from her interspersed with online searches for fastest extradition countries and how to bypass spousal privilege. He read for 10 minutes, the only sound his ragged, shaking breaths. The betrayal he had inflicted on Evelyn was horrific, but the betrayal inflicted on him was total. He had not been loved. He had been hunted. He had been a mark. He'd destroyed his family, his life, his honor for a woman who was robbing him blind and planning to leave him in a jail cell. He dropped the file. He looked at Clare, his eyes empty of everything but a vast, desolate horror. "What do I do?" he whispered. "First," Clare said, her voice like steel, "you call the SEC. Then you call the district attorney. You are going to confess, not just to what she did, but to your own negligence. You are going to turn over every piece of evidence you have. You're going to lose your job. You're probably going to be sued. You might even face charges. But you are going to burn her to the ground. For Evelyn. And for your son." Marcus, for the first time in his life, nodded. He picked up his phone. He was a ruined man. But in his ruin, he finally found a sliver of purpose. He was going to reclaim the only thing he had left, the truth. The arrest was spectacular. Sarah Serafina Jenkins was apprehended not at her apartment, but at a Chanel boutique on Fifth Avenue, attempting to make a $40,000 purchase on one of Marcus's cards. When the card was declined, Clare, anticipating this, had already helped Marcus freeze his assets. She had caused a scene. The two NYPD detectives alerted by Art Donovan didn't even have to use handcuffs. She saw the look on their faces, and she simply crumpled. The mask was gone. The victor was just a common thief in a very expensive dress. The first 3 months of Oliver Blackwell's life were measured in fractions. Milliliters of milk grams of weight gained percentage points of oxygen saturation. The seasons outside the tinted hospital windows turned the thick, heavy green of a Brooklyn summer bleeding into the crisp gold and rust palette of a late October. Inside the hospital, time moved differently. For Sarah Serafina Jenkins, it moved with the agonizing, fluorescent-lit slowness of the criminal justice system. Her high-stakes gamble had imploded. Faced with a mountain of irrefutable evidence provided by Marcus and the digital forensics from Meridian Capital, her bail was set at an impossible $10 million. She sat in a cell at Rikers Island, her blonde hair already showing dark roots. Her name now officially and ignominiously Sarah Jenkins on every court docket. She was indicted on a sweeping array of federal charges, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, embezzlement, and was facing a minimum of 15 years. The con was over. For Marcus Blackwell, time had ceased to exist. It was a flat, gray, unending expanse of purgatory. As he had confessed to the SEC and the DA, Meridian Capital had in turn fired him, disgraced him, and initiated a series of brutal civil lawsuits to recover the client funds he had been responsible for. His assets were frozen. The Brooklyn brownstone was seized. He was a pariah. He now lived in a transient, extended-stay hotel in Queens, a beige room that smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale cigarettes. The Tom Ford suits were gone, sold for cash. He wore the same rotation of rumpled shirts and jeans, his face hollowed out, his eyes permanently bloodshot. The only mark of his former life was the ring. Serafina's simple gold band. It was still stuck on his finger. In the early days, in a fit of self-loathing, he had tried to rip it off. He'd used soap butter from a diner, even oil, but his knuckle had swollen. The ring, a size too small, had become a permanent golden shackle. A brand. a daily gleaming reminder of his crime. Twice a week, he would take the Q train to the hospital for his supervised visitation. He wasn't allowed in the main NICU. A social worker would bring Oliver to a small, private family room. For 1 hour, Marcus would sit in a rocking chair holding his son. "Hey, Ollie," he'd whisper, his voice hoarse. It's Dad." Oliver, now thriving and robust, would simply stare at him with wide, dark, unblinking eyes. Evelyn's eyes. "You're getting so big." Marcus would continue his monologue, the same every time. "So strong. You're not like me. You're a fighter. Like your mom." He would trail off, the silence stretching. "I'm sorry, Oliver. God, I'm so sorry. I had everything. I had everything. Your mom, she was the only good thing I ever had, and I broke her. I broke it all." He would confess to the tiny, silent child. He told him about Serafina, about the money, about the fight. He told him about the hollow, cold ambition that had driven him to see his wife as an obligation and his own son as a complication. "I was a fool," he'd cry, fat, silent tears rolling down his cheeks and splashing onto Oliver's blanket. "I'm a monster. I know that. I want you to know. I'm so sorry, Ollie. I'm so sorry." When the hour was up, the social worker would knock, and Marcus would hand his son back the child's warmth, leaving an aching, cold void in his arms. He would then go to the public waiting room on the 5th floor just to be in the same building as Evelyn, who he was still legally barred from seeing. For Clare, time was a weapon. She wielded it with the precision of a surgeon and the relentless, grinding force of a litigator. Her life had become a bifurcated nightmare. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., she was a ruthless partner at her law firm, managing hostile takeovers. 6 p.m. to midnight, she was Evelyn and Oliver's guardian. She had been the one to hold Oliver when he was finally cleared from the incubator. She had been the one to give him his first real bottle. And she was the one who sat by Evelyn's bedside, refusing to accept the grim prognosis. Evelyn had been moved from the SICU to the long-term neurological care wing. Her condition had been downgraded from critical to stable. Her body was healed, but she remained in a persistent vegetative state. Clare, Doctor. Hansen had said, her face lined with a sympathy Clare despised. "We are 3 months post-event. The brain scans show minimal activity. We've done all we can. At this point, we need to start talking about goals of care, about long-term placement." "No," Clare said, her voice flat and cold. "She's in there. She's waiting for her son. I'm not putting her in a home to be turned over by orderlies." So Clare began a new ritual. Every evening, she would get clearance from the NICU and wheel Oliver's bassinet to Evelyn's room. The nurses thought it was equal parts heartbreaking and morbid. Clare didn't care. She would gently lift Oliver, now a healthy 7 pounds, and place him on his mother's chest. "She needs to know he's here," Clare would insist. She would put Evelyn's hand on Oliver's back. She would play the same playlist of soft classical music that Evelyn had curated for the nursery. She would even read from Evelyn's own pregnancy journal, her voice echoing in the sterile room. October 10th. Clare read, her voice thick. "Felt him kick for real today. Not just a flutter, a full-on World Cup-level kick. Marcus was at the office, but I put his hand on my stomach later. He said he felt it. I think he was just saying it, but it felt real. I can't wait to meet you, little one." Clare would watch her sister's blank face for any sign. A flicker, a twitch, anything. For 94 days, there was nothing. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, a cold, bright day with a sky of piercing blue, it happened. Clare was in the room, Oliver asleep in his bassinet beside the bed. She was on her laptop, firing off a scathing email to an opposing counsel. The only sounds were her quiet typing and the rhythmic, gentle sigh of Evelyn's respiratory monitor. A new sound entered the room. A small, wet gasp, a cough. Clare froze. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. It wasn't Oliver. He was fast asleep. She looked at Evelyn. Her sister's face, which had been smooth and slack for 3 months, was frowning. Her brow was furrowed in confusion. "Evelyn," Clare whispered, her heart stopping. Evelyn's eyelids, as thin and pale as parchment, fluttered. They squeezed shut as if against a bright light, and then slowly they opened. They weren't blank. They weren't staring at the ceiling. They were looking. Hazy, unfocused, but aware. Clare hit the nurse's call button, her hand shaking so violently she could barely find it. "Dr. Hansen, get Dr. Hansen to room 512. Now she's awake." Evelyn's eyes rolled, trying to make sense of the room, the tubes, the light. They landed on Clare. A tiny, pained, confused smile touched her lips. "Clare." The voice was a dry, scratching rasp, the sound of a throat that hadn't been used in a season. "Oh my God!" Clare burst into tears, dropping her laptop and lunging for her sister's hand. "Oh my God, Evelyn, you're back! You're here! You're back!" Within seconds, the room was full. Dr. Hansen, 2 nurses. The lights were on. "Evelyn. Evelyn, my name is Dr. Hansen. You're in the hospital. You've been very sick. Can you hear me?" Evelyn just stared at Clare, her eyes wide with fear. "It's okay, Laurie," Clare sobbed, stroking her hair. "You're safe. You're safe." "Evelyn, can you squeeze my hand?" Dr. Hansen asked, her voice calm and commanding. A long, agonizing second, then a faint pressure on the doctor's fingers. "Good. Good, Evelyn. Can you follow my finger with your eyes?" Evelyn's gaze, slow and jerky, followed the doctor's hand. Dr. Hansen let out a breath she'd been holding for 3 months. "Welcome back, Mrs. Blackwell. My goodness, welcome back." The nurses checked her vitals, her IVs. The room was a blur of activity. But Evelyn's focus was absolute. She kept looking past Clare, past the doctor, to the bassinet. "What?" she whispered, her voice cracking with disuse. "What's—" And then a different, primal terror filled her eyes. Her free hand, weak and trembling, went to her stomach. It was flat. "The baby," she gasped, her breath hitching the monitors, starting to beep in alarm. "My baby. Is he— He's here!" Clare cried out, cutting her off, rushing to the bassinet. "He's here, Evelyn. He's safe. He's perfect. He's a fighter just like you." Clare gently scooped up the sleeping Oliver and, with a reverence reserved for a sacred act, placed him in the crook of Evelyn's arm. For the first time in his life, Oliver Blackwell was being held by his mother. Evelyn looked down. Her breath caught in her throat. This tiny, warm, breathing creature. Her son. She saw her own dark hair, her own features. The connection severed by violence and betrayal refused itself in an instant. It was a current of pure, undiluted animal love. It was the anchor that had pulled her back from the silent, dark abyss. She began to weep. Not a loud, gasping sob, but silent, profound tears that rolled from the corners of her eyes into her hair. She raised her trembling hand, and with all the strength she had, brushed a finger against his cheek. "Oliver," she whispered, a name she had only ever said to her own reflection. "My Oliver." It was a perfect, sacred tableau. Mother, son, and sister. A family reforged in fire and grief. And it was into this sacred moment that the devil walked. The door to room 512 pushed open. Marcus Blackwell stood in the doorway. He was not there for Evelyn. He was there for his 4 p.m. supervised visit. He was there to pick up Oliver from Clare. Clare, he started, his voice a low monotone. The social worker is. He stopped. His eyes processed the scene. Clare was crying. Dr. Hansen was smiling. And Evelyn was not blank. She was not a body in a bed. She was awake. She was alive. She was looking at him. His world, which had been gray and hollow, exploded into a blinding, agonizing hope. He had prayed for this in his own pathetic way. He had begged a God he didn't believe in for this one impossible miracle. Evelyn, he whispered, his voice breaking. He took a step into the room. Clare, seeing him, felt a rage so pure it was white hot. "No," she hissed. "Get out." "Evelyn," Marcus said louder, his eyes locked on his wife. He saw her. He saw her holding their son. A family. Maybe he wasn't a ghost. Maybe he could be forgiven. "Evelyn, my God, He took another step, his hand outstretched a plea. Evelyn watched him. Her mind was still foggy the last 3 months, a black, empty void. But the man in front of her, he was her husband. He was Marcus. He looked terrible. Thinner. Broken. She felt a flicker of confusion. And then her gaze, sharp and newly aware, dropped to his outstretched hand. The ring. It was not the platinum band she had placed on his finger on their wedding day. It was not the ring she had kissed for luck before his board meetings. It was a simple, cheap, shining band of yellow gold. It was a different ring. In Evelyn's mind, a door that had been sealed shut was blown off its hinges. The sound was deafening. It was not the fog of the coma that returned. It was the fire, the study, the burner phone, the name Serafina, the texts. Last night was incredible. He's a fool to stay with her. The incubator. Love is for children. The fight, the betrayal, the white-hot, agonizing pain, the sight of her own blood on the Persian rug. His voice not panicked, but annoyed. Don't be dramatic, Evelyn. The monitors beside her bed, which had been steady, exploded in a screaming, rhythmic alarm. Beep, 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 beep. Her heart rate is 180, a nurse yelled. She's in severe tachy, doctor. Evelyn, Marcus cried out, terrified, rushing forward. What's wrong, Evelyn? Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought you were… I'm sorry. Evelyn's eyes, which had been soft with a mother's love, snapped to his. They were not confused. They were not weak. They were filled with a cold, clear, spectral light. They were the eyes of a woman who had walked through hell and come back with fire. She remembered. Everything. She lifted her free hand, the one not holding her son. She pointed a single trembling finger at her husband. You, she rasped. The word was not a greeting. It was a judgment. Evelyn, please, I can explain. I was lost. He babbled, tears of panic and self-pity streaming down his face. He was inches from the bed. Evelyn's face, her beautiful, pale face, contorted. The monitors shrieked. She took a ragged breath, and with all the air in her newly awakened lungs, she spat the final verdict. Traitor! The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. It was not an accusation. It was a fucking fact. It was the sound of a gavel striking of a tomb being sealed. It was the final, unforgivable truth. Clare, seeing her sister's violent distress, moved. She became a lioness. She put herself physically between Marcus and the bed. "Get out! Now!" she roared, shoving his chest. "You are not welcome here. You will not do this to her again. Get out!" Marcus stumbled backward, his hands raised as if to ward off a blow. He looked past Clare's shoulder. Evelyn was no longer looking at him. Her face was turned away, her gaze buried in the soft, dark hair of her son. She was shutting him out. She was banishing him. She had chosen. She had her son. She had her sister. She was alive. And he was, and would forever be, nothing. He was a ghost, after all. Marcus turned his legs numb. He stumbled from the room. The sound of the door clicking shut behind him was the loudest, most final sound he had ever heard. He was on the other side of it, in the cold, bright hallway. Alone. The screaming monitors inside the room quieted, replaced by the soft, new sound of his son beginning to crun. The story of Evelyn, Marcus, and Serafina isn't one with a happy ending, but it is a story of survival. It's a story about the devastating consequences of betrayal and the incredible, unexplainable strength of a mother's love. Evelyn woke up, but her fight is just beginning. She has to rebuild her life, raise her son, and find a way to heal from a wound that will never truly close. What do you think Evelyn should do next? Do you believe a man like Marcus can ever truly be redeemed, or are some actions unforgivable? We all know someone who has been touched by betrayal. This story is for them. It's for every survivor who had to fight their way back from the dark. If this story moved you, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas every single week. Your support helps us tell these important stories. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.